La séance est ouverte. Chers collègues, l'ordre du jour appelle la présentation et la discussion du rapport de Madame Carmen Leite au nom de la Commission des questions sociales, de la santé et du développement durable sur lutter contre les maladies évitables par la vaccination, par le biais de services de qualité et par la démystification des discours anti-vaccins. Madame la rapporteure, vous disposez d'un temps de parole de 7 minutes pour présenter votre rapport et de 5 minutes pour répondre aux orateurs. Vous avez la parole.
Gracias, señor presidente, parlamentarios. El tema de la vacunación ha suscitado una gran atención debido a la pandemia de COVID-19, pero también ha evidenciado rechazos, lo que demuestra que nuestra seguridad sanitaria mundial requiere mejoras. Es muy preocupante que las tasas de inmunización estén disminuyendo en todo el mundo. El derecho a la salud es una parte fundamental de nuestros derechos humanos y de nuestra dignidad, tal y como se consagra tanto en el Pacto Internacional de Derechos Económicos, Sociales y Culturales como en la Carta Europea. Los Estados miembros tienen la responsabilidad de adoptar las medidas necesarias para lograr la plena realización de este derecho, mediante la prevención, el tratamiento y el control de las enfermedades epidémicas, endémicas, profesionales y de otro tipo. La vacunación es una intervención médica rutinaria. Sigue siendo el método más seguro y eficaz contra la protección de muchas enfermedades infecciosas. Según la OMS, evita entre 2 y 3 millones de muertes al año y se calcula que una mejora en la cobertura mundial podría salvar otro 1,5 millones de vidas más. Hoy mismo sale en las noticias que la vacuna contra la COVID-19 ha salvado 20 millones de vidas. Ampliar el acceso a la inmunización es crucial para alcanzar los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible de la ONU. La vacunación reduce los costes sanitarios y la pérdida de productividad tanto del paciente y de la persona que lo atiende, así como de sus complicaciones. Las vacunas no solo evitan la enfermedad y la muerte asociadas a las enfermedades infecciosas, sino que también contribuyen a obtener beneficios más amplios en el desarrollo social y económico. Desde la introducción de las primeras vacunas se han conseguido notables logros en materia de salud pública. A pesar de ello, las tasas subóptimas de cobertura vacunal son, en este momento, uno de los problemas más críticos de salud pública, dado que el número de europeos vacunados contra ciertas enfermedades infecciosas está actualmente en declive. Así lo demuestra el resurgimiento de enfermedades prevenibles por vacunación, y ello a pesar de que se ha demostrado que las tasas altas de inmunización contra el SARS-CoV-2 eran las herramientas más útiles para plantar cara a la pandemia y restaurar una cierta normalidad en nuestras vidas tras el tsunami de la COVID-19. Cuando hablamos de indecisión en la vacunación, nos referimos al retraso o rechazo de la inmunización a pesar de la disponibilidad de los servicios de vacunación. La indecisión suele ser específica del contexto y se ve afectada por lo que la gente piensa y siente sobre vacunas, enfermedades prevenibles por vacunación, cuestiones de seguridad, programa, influencias sociales y el activismo actual de antivacunación. Los estudios muestran que Europa tiene un porcentaje superior de opiniones negativas en relación con la importancia, seguridad y eficacia de las vacunas. De hecho, 7 de los 10 países con peor opinión sobre la seguridad en las vacunas son de este continente, de Europa. Además, las dudas sobre las vacunas parecen estar más presentes entre las generaciones más jóvenes. Los mayores tienden a tener más confianza en las vacunas porque han sido testigos de las consecuencias de los brotes de enfermedades infecciosas y de cómo se han combatido mediante la vacunación. También la confianza en las autoridades sanitarias y en los sistemas de salud son esenciales para aumentar las tasas de vacunación. Por lo tanto, cualquier acontecimiento negativo en el sector sanitario puede contribuir a aumentar la indecisión o las dudas sobre las vacunas. En algunos entornos se asume que la indecisión es la causa de la escasa afectación, pero un estudio más detallado revela la gran importancia de otros factores como la accesibilidad, la disponibilidad y la calidad de los servicios sanitarios. Es importante importante diferenciar entre estos factores para que las estrategias puedan ir dirigidas a los diferentes problemas o barreras y, por tanto, contribuir a cerrar las brechas y aumentar la aceptación de las vacunas. Como he recomendado en mi informe, los Estados miembros deberían hacer uso de los programas de inmunización a medida de la OMS Europa, que ofrecen un modelo para la segmentación de la población, el diagnóstico de las causas subyacentes de la infravacunación en los subgrupos indecisos, así como la adaptación de las intervenciones para abordar los factores subyacentes. Debemos mejorar los conocimientos en materia de salud de la población colaborando con el sector educativo, escuchando las preocupaciones que pueda tener la gente sobre las vacunas y garantizando el acceso a una información fiable y fidedigna a las generaciones de hoy y de mañana. El personal sanitario debe dedicar más tiempo a los padres, tanto antes como después del nacimiento del niño, para hablar con ellos de las preocupaciones que puedan tener respecto a la vacunación. Esto permitirá que las familias estén mejor informadas sobre los riesgos de no vacunar a sus hijos y probablemente mejorará la confianza en las autoridades de salud pública y conducirá a mayores tasas de vacunación. Además, es de suma importancia que los Estados miembros construyan sistemas sanitarios sólidos y ofrezcan una atención sanitaria universal a sus poblaciones. Y destaco esto, sanitaria universal a sus poblaciones. A través del análisis del cuestionario del CEPRD que se distribuyó para la preparación de este informe, se puso de manifiesto que el hecho de que las vacunas no estén cubiertas por la asistencia sanitaria estatal contribuye en gran manera a aumentar la barrera para garantizar la aceptación de las vacunas. Por último, me gustaría expresar mi preocupación por el hecho de que el debate público sobre las vacunas se ha polarizado y politizado mucho en los últimos años. La pandemia de COVID-19 ha demostrado cómo la cuestión de la salud pública no se limita a las fronteras nacionales, sino que es un asunto de interés internacional. La difusión de información intencionadamente engañosa y falsa, en particular en Internet, supone una grave amenaza para la salud pública. A nivel nacional, los Estados miembros deberían invertir en más investigación sobre el comportamiento digital y aumentar sus esfuerzos en la difusión de información veraz en las plataformas de medios sociales. A nivel internacional, los Estados deberían reunirse para estudiar políticas y normativas que hagan responsables a las plataformas y a otros actores que se beneficien de la difusión de información errónea peligrosa. Espero que el presente informe sea un paso útil para hacer frente a las dudas y barreras sobre las vacunas y para garantizar mayores tasas de vacunación e inmunización en Europa y en el mundo. Quiero dar las gracias a la OMS Europa y a las secretarias Julia Pererba y Anita Golani, que me acompaña, por su valiosa ayuda, así como a los técnicos e intérpretes que nos facilitan la comunicación. También agradecer a la presidenta y a los miembros de la Comisión de Asuntos Sociales, Salud y Desarrollo Sostenible por confiar en mí para llevar a cabo este informe. Muchas gracias por su atención y salud para todos.
Muchas gracias, señora Leite. Now we open the debate, and first in the debate I call Mr. Bob van Pareren from the Netherlands, and he speaks on behalf of the European Conservative Group. Bob, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I see the title of this debate, it looks if I am in professional days, of my former professional days, in a medical congress. Whilst on the other hand, we get a repetition on yesterday's issue on misinformation. It's not that I say it's not good, because I really promote basic vaccinations, but I still have some comments, and the basis is that trust is the base of acceptance. Basic vaccines, they are proven fine and give great results. So they should really continue to be promoted. But you know why there is a mistrust, misinformation these days. That's because the experimental COVID vaccines, and you called them also in your speech, are not well documented for the public domain. Of course, they are well documented for the scientific domain, but the public is not aware about the contras and the pluses. So you get rumors, and they are not to solve with, as we discussed yesterday, censorship or marketing campaigns. The use of explanation or words by governments need to improve. As an example, when we talk about COVID vaccines, we talked about booster vaccines. But in fact, they were no boosters. They were just another of the same. And why? Because the mode of action of the previous vaccination was expired. There's not bad about that, but use the right language, because the people are getting upset, may get upset, and that's not what we need in a pandemic. The mode of action was short time, as I said, and that is also important to talk about vaccines, that they are really of use. The World Health Organization has the same approach as we have today in the Commission. And politics, I think, should really listen to science and look at the pro and the contras of the medicines, in this case about vaccinations. Prevention, by the way, is the key. And that's not per se the vaccination. When we take COVID, and it is still running up these days, it is no handshake that's important. It's important to wear masks and to use ventilation. So building your self-immune system is very important. But for the weaker persons, it should, of course, be vaccination. So I say, no obligation for vaccinations. It is a free will of the people, very good information, and respect the human rights. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Dank u wel, Bob. Prochain orateur est M. Jean-Pierre Grain de la Suisse. Il parle au nom du groupe ADLE. Jean-Pierre, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, chers et chers collègues. Comme le mentionne l'excellent rapport de notre collègue Carmen Leite, les épidémies et maladies contagieuses peuvent se propager rapidement à travers les pays et les régions. La vaccination doit être promue en tant que bien public international et le savoir-faire doit être partagé. C'est l'avis du groupe ALDE qui met en avant la responsabilité individuelle, le respect des institutions et l'égalité de tous envers la santé. Durant la pandémie de Covid-19, on n'a jamais autant parlé de vaccination. Surtout, les anti-vaccins ont donné de la voix lors de rassemblements sur la voie publique et sur les réseaux sociaux. La vaccination demeure pour notre groupe la méthode la plus adéquate et la plus efficace pour se protéger de nombreuses maladies infectieuses. La variole a été bannie de notre planète par la vaccination, de même que la poliomyélite et bien d'autres. Lors de cette pandémie de Covid-19, sans la découverte rapide des vaccins de divers genres, on ne peut imaginer quelles auraient été les conséquences sur les populations humaines. Mais le débat public sur les vaccins s'est fortement polarisé et politisé durant la pandémie. Si la vaccination ne doit pas être rendue obligatoire, c'est l'avis de notre groupe, mais elle doit être fortement recommandée et encouragée. Pour garantir des taux de vaccination des plus élevés, tous les États membres devraient avant tout mener des campagnes de sensibilisation et d'information tout en améliorant la qualité des services sanitaires afin de créer un environnement propice à la vaccination qui devrait être gratuite pour permettre à chacune et à chacun d'y accéder. Un manque d'informations sur la nécessité d'être vacciné et les doutes quant à la sécurité de la vaccination sont deux raisons invoquées par celles et ceux qui refusent systématiquement cette vaccination. De même peut-être que les spots télévisés montrant l'aiguille qui pique le patient peuvent aussi être dissuasifs pour les personnes sensibles aux piqûres. Ce rapport doit encourager tous les pays à promouvoir une continuité non partisane des politiques de vaccination, en redoublant d'efforts pour lutter contre la désinformation et surtout les fausses informations sur les vaccins, cela par une communication transparente et fondée sur des données crédibles. Cela pour permettre une couverture vaccinale suffisante de la population pour le bien de tous et aussi pour protéger les plus faibles d'entre nous si cette pandémie se poursuit encore. Ce sont aussi les vœux les plus chers de notre groupe ALDE qui remercie notre collègue Carmen Leite pour ce rapport complet et pertinent. Merci pour votre attention.
Merci à vous, Jean-Pierre. Next in the debate, I call Mr. Andreas Unerland from Norway. who will speak on behalf of the group of the Unified European Left, and it will be his first speech here in the Assembly. Andreas, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. I would like to compliment the rapporteur for her work and for such concise and specific reports. The pandemic showed that we are not only fighting a disease that kills, we are also fighting the spread of misinformation and conspiracy theories. As the report says clearly, vaccines are one of the inventions that has saved the most lives in human history. They represent a giant leap in medicine. Vaccines have been thoroughly tested and proven to have enormous effect. Nevertheless, we now see the spread of misinformation about vaccines. For example, the measles vaccine. And here is apparently a paradox. When a vaccine is so effective that the disease virtually disappears from society, one can be blinded to their great effect, and when conspiracies spread, then the vaccination rate drops and the disease returns. This is the case with measles. So what can we do to fight the spread of misinformation and ensure that people get vaccinated? It is a bad idea to be tempted to use more force and forcibly vaccinate children against their parents' wishes. More force will only create a bigger gap and mistrust. What we need to work on is building trust in society. Everything is connected with everything. So it must be said, and the evidence is clear, societies with a smaller wealth inequality are societies with a greater degree of trust. Trust must also be created with strict standards for the development of vaccines that gives people the confidence that the technology is good and safe. We need to have good and accessible information about the vaccines and its effect. Here we believe that the state has a responsibility to ensure transparency, a responsibility to publish information and actively drive myth-busting. It's not enough to just have numbers and facts in reports. It must be an active effort to reach out to people and present facts in a way that they can understand. To secure a high degree of vaccination, it's necessary also to lift restrictions arising from patents and intellectual property rights and promoting vaccination as an international public good. Vaccine development should not be driven by profits, but rather the common good. The goal must be that more people can access vaccines faster and cheaper. We thank you for the report and the important work to ensure the legitimacy of vaccines.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Prochain orateur dans notre débat est Monsieur Pierre-Alain Frides de la Suisse, au nom du groupe des socialistes, démocrates et verts. Pierre-Alain.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mesdames, Messieurs, chers collègues. La vaccination représente indéniablement une arme dans la lutte contre nombre de maladies infectieuses. Et pour certains, il n'y a qu'un pas pour s'accrocher au dogme de l'infaillibilité des vaccins, la voie royale pour répondre à tous les défis et questions en lien avec ces problèmes. Oui, les vaccins sont utiles et pour la plupart efficaces. Et pourtant, ils sont souvent l'objet de controverses. Je suis médecin, je pratique des vaccinations et pourtant j'ai quelques bémols à opposer au dogme de l'infaillibilité. La meilleure façon de résister à un virus ou une autre infection, c'est encore d'être en bonne santé avec accès à une bonne alimentation et à l'hygiène. Dans l'histoire, la tuberculose n'a pas été quasiment éradiquée dans nos pays grâce au vaccin BCG, mais par l'amélioration des conditions de vie des gens et de l'hygiène. On sait que le BCG ne protège que contre la méningite tuberculeuse. Un vaccin n'est jamais efficace à 100%. L'immunité conférée par un vaccin est moins forte et moins durable que par la maladie naturelle. Vacciner à 2, 4 et 6 mois des nourrissons avec chaque fois 6 ou 7 maladies, alors que leur système immunitaire n'est pas encore mature, pose question. On peut pour l'essentiel les vacciner un peu plus tard. Je m'arrête là. Les vaccins pour l'essentiel sont utiles et le rapport insiste avec justesse sur l'importance de disposer d'une couverture vaccinale suffisante pour limiter la circulation du virus. Ce qui est juste également pour un médecin, c'est de vacciner de manière ciblée, sur mesure, en tenant compte de la personne en face de lui. La pandémie de Covid-19 a ouvert la boîte de Pandore sur la question des vaccins et l'on a tout entendu. Découverte trop rapide, pas de recul. ARN, ADN, la grande confusion sur le risque de changement du capital génétique. On a même entendu qu'on pouvait injecter des puces électroniques avec le vaccin. Les fake news ont envahi les réseaux sociaux. La technologie de l'ARN messager, pourtant, est ancienne, bien contrôlée et a fait ses preuves. Mais elle fait peur, l'inconnu fait peur, et les gens sont friands de nouvelles sensationnelles et de théories complotistes. Alors face à ces doutes, chers collègues, parfois légitimes, il ne faut surtout pas se reposer sur des certitudes rigides, reposant sur ce fameux dogme de l'infaillibilité des vaccins. La médecine n'est pas une science complètement exacte. Alors une seule solution face aux doutes, l'écoute, la vulgarisation sans cesse recommencée, l'information, une solide relation médecin-malade. Pas d'oukase, pas de rejet, mais encore une fois l'écoute, le dialogue, toujours et toujours. Et des soins sur mesure pour chacune et chacun, et surtout jamais d'obligation vaccinale. Merci pour votre attention.
Merci, Monsieur Frides. Et maintenant, c'est Monsieur Fournier.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, mes chers collègues. La vaccination a représenté une avancée considérable dans le domaine médical et permet d'éviter 2 à 3 millions de décès par an. Pourtant, on observe aujourd'hui une résurgence de certaines maladies infectieuses. C'est le cas notamment de la rougeole, maladie pour laquelle le nombre de cas a augmenté de 79% au cours des 2 premiers mois de l'année 2022 par rapport à la même période en 2021. En parallèle, il faut rappeler que l'épidémie de Covid-19 n'est pas terminée et que la plupart des personnes qui décèdent aujourd'hui de cette maladie ne sont pas vaccinées. Face à cette situation, les pouvoirs publics doivent promouvoir la vaccination. Pour cela, ils doivent faire face à 2 défis principaux. Lutter contre la réticence des populations à l'égard de la vaccination et favoriser l'accès à celle-ci. Tout d'abord, malgré les bénéfices avérés de la vaccination et les risques liés à la résurgence des maladies infectieuses, on constate que la réticence au vaccin ne cesse de se développer. Les fausses informations diffusées sur les réseaux sociaux et les scandales impliquant le secteur de la santé contribuent à cette réticence. Dès lors, le débat public sur les vaccins s'est nettement polarisé et politisé avec le développement de groupes anti-vax plus nombreux et plus organisés, notamment pour s'opposer aux vaccins contre la Covid-19. Les politiques publiques doivent prendre en compte cette situation en favorisant notamment une information fiable et transparente sur la sécurité et l'efficacité des vaccins. Je veux à cet égard saluer le rôle important joué par la Direction européenne de la qualité du médicament et des soins de santé du Conseil de l'Europe dans le cadre de la pharmacopée européenne. La diffusion de fausses informations doit également être combattue au moyen d'une réglementation appropriée. Cela renvoie à d'autres débats que nous avons eus au sein de l'Assemblée, mais c'est fondamental. Parallèlement, les États doivent favoriser le développement de la vaccination. Pour cela, la vaccination doit être gratuite et accessible sur tout le territoire d'un État. Des infrastructures doivent donc être développées pour permettre cette vaccination. Le droit à la santé est un élément fondamental des droits humains et de notre conception de la dignité humaine consacrée par la Charte sociale européenne. Ce droit à la santé ne peut être garanti sans des stratégies de vaccination adaptées et volontaristes. Je vous remercie.
Merci, Monsieur Fournier. Now we move on to the list of speakers, and the first speaker is Madame Yulhakian from Armenia. Is she here? Doesn't look like it. Okay, then we move on to Madame Arpadarai. Yes.
Dear colleagues, vaccines played a pivotal role in improving public health. They saved lives and protected societies. Vaccines are the achievement of scientific method, work and sacrifice of scientists and health practitioners. They are part of society's public health mechanisms. There have already been some anti-vaccine sentiments in the world, but traditionally it was a marginal voice, a small portion of society. The level of vaccine hesitancy in case of COVID-19 vaccination is extremely high, and we talk about a global trend. So how did it happen? The main reason is many instances of mismanagement of the process of mandating and promotion of COVID-19 vaccines. Vaccines are science. Science is a method based on critical thinking, on admittance of mistakes and looking for new paths. Sometimes vaccines work, sometimes they don't. Honest mistakes happen, and science and scientists were always strong enough to admit and look for better solutions. This is how medicine progressed. However, in the administration and promotion of COVID-19 vaccines, instead of pure science and public health, many people saw corporate greed of pharma industry, their fight for the luxurious piece of markets. Corporate greed is natural, but did we see enough action on behalf of relevant organizations to curb and contain it? We saw bureaucrats who, instead of honest and weighted decisions based on public interest and safety, were mandating various doubtful decisions, all in order to avert personal responsibility for complex decisions and take personal risks for possible mistakes. We saw vaccine egoism and rich countries buying out of stocks of medicines globally, leaving poor countries undersupplied. We have seen censorship in media and academia, favoring particular points of view of vaccines. We saw statistical manipulation and withholding of certain facts from public. All of this was nominally done with the public interest in mind. One of the arguments was that alternative or contradicting ideas feed vaccine hesitancy. But in fact, censorship itself is anti-scientific and is feeding hesitancy. Science dies where censorship starts. And actions of some international organizations, social media and news outlets, which were aimed at filtering and censoring certain points of view that were supposed to reduce the vaccine hesitancy, became in fact a major factor in feeding and increasing vaccine hesitancy. People may not have a total access to statistics and data, but people are good at spotting manipulations. If we want to win over the vaccine hesitancy, if we want the vaccines to work, we must return the whole conversation into the realm of science. We have to bring back this critical thinking into the discussion over the efficiency and safety of vaccines. If a vaccine does not do the job, it should be admitted publicly, and a new vaccine must be produced. We have to drastically reduce the role of bureaucrats in the decision-making on this and bring back epidemiologists and doctors. There should be less national egoism and more international cooperation in this. And our Assembly's job is not to marginalize the hesitant citizens. It is to bring back the common sense and accountability into the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we could go to Madam Ahedou. Ah, yes, there we are. I'm sorry, I couldn't see.
Morning. Sí, bien, lo primero, yo quiero agradecer el informe a la señora Leite y lo que no voy a hacer es repetir cuestiones que ha expresado tan adecuadamente. Las vacunas parece que se han puesto de moda ahora que hemos tenido una pandemia, pero la verdad es que han sido seguras, eficaces y yo creo que han sido la mayor y mejor herramienta en salud pública con la que hemos contado bastante antes de la pandemia COVID. Son un escudo personal, pero son un escudo colectivo y fundamental, salvan vidas. Esto quiere decir que es necesario, desde nuestro punto de vista, garantizar el acceso universal a la vacunación y aumentar las coberturas, pero en todo el planeta, que no se nos olvide, en todo el planeta, que con esta pandemia sí hemos aprendido que los virus no saben que las fronteras existen. Bien, yo la verdad vengo del País Vasco y es una suerte el nivel de cobertura tan altísimo que tenemos. No pasa en toda Europa. Yo creo que la razón fundamental de esas altas coberturas es la confianza de la ciudadanía en el sistema público de salud. Y yo creo que una de las cosas que hay que hacer es reforzar esos sistemas y reforzar la confianza. Me gustaría distinguir dos cuestiones en todo este informe. Estamos hablando, por un lado, de ciertas zonas del mundo donde el problema no es el negacionismo, El problema real es la falta de acceso a las vacunas, la no disponibilidad, el que cuenten con sistemas de salud débiles. Así que creo que es una responsabilidad global de absolutamente todos el fortalecimiento de los sistemas sanitarios en todos los países del mundo. Y por otro lado hay otra cuestión que son esas actitudes y discursos que afloran y han aflorado más durante la pandemia, antivacunas, conspiranoicos, sin ninguna evidencia científica y en muchas ocasiones faltando a la verdad, que aunque se han hecho mayores en la pandemia ya existían previamente y que están haciendo que bajen coberturas y que están reapareciendo enfermedades que teníamos casi erradicadas. Y creo que tenemos que decir que este debate antivacunas es un debate, si me permiten la expresión, primermundista. Y digo primermundista porque si vamos al eslogan de la última campaña de Médicos Sin Fronteras, dice claramente, hay algo que da más miedo que las vacunas y es no tenerlas. Así que cuando tenemos grupos que están planteando el no vacunarse, es creo que un debate de ricos y eso nos lo tenemos que hacer mirar. Y finalmente, una reflexión que solemos hacer muchas veces, pero nunca concluimos y en algún momento tendremos que concluir. Y es, por un lado, está el derecho a la salud, por otro lado, evidente, está el derecho individual a vacunarse o no, pero son dos derechos que habrá que conjugar en algún momento. Y además de esos dos derechos tendremos que ver qué incidencia tiene este derecho cuando estamos hablando de menores. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. And now we go to Mr. Munkachu. He was just away from his seat, but he's back now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Being as a physician myself, I had all the childhood disease vaccinations. But this type of vaccines were developed in many years. There were a lot of experiments, and there is still a need for the parents to consent for child vaccination. But I'm talking about the other type of vaccinations that are experimental, and the need to follow the 20th century jurisprudence when it comes to experimentation. In other words, if a vaccine is experimental, it has to be and have to follow the Nuremberg Code. There are 10 codes that establish the rights of the people who are going to accept or not accept a vaccination as an experiment. Now, for this standpoint, I believe that there is a very important point, and that point is informal consent. Now, if informal consent is crucial, it has to be very extensive. In other words, the person should be aware of the facts and the risks they are going to undertake when they agree with the experimental vaccination. Moreover, if the vaccine is under the emergency use authorization, doesn't change anything. It's still an experimental vaccination. And that's the reason why right now there is a lot of debate when it comes to what is compulsory, what is mandatory vaccination. And I can see some of the states and even our European friends adopted the green certificate. Now, I have a problem with that because somehow there is a degree of compulsory when it comes to vaccination. Therefore, I think we have to come back over and over to the Nuremberg codes, and they should be properly followed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we go to Fiona O'Loughlin. Is she here? No? Okay, then it's Madam Zahid. Yes.
parliamentarians and esteemed colleagues, thank you for the opportunity to debate this important topic with you all today. I've been looking forward to doing some anti-vaccine myth-busting. Countering the disinformation regarding vaccines, especially vaccines for COVID-19, is vital to addressing vaccine hesitancy. But if we are myth-busting, then we must also bust the myth that our healthcare systems are not also responsible for some of this hesitancy. In Canada, at least one poll has shown vaccine hesitancy among Indigenous people is 2 times the rate of that among white Canadians. Given the number of studies that have confirmed the existence of systemic racism against Indigenous people in Canadian healthcare systems, how can we blame Indigenous people who are hesitant? How can healthcare systems ask for trust when that trust is so often broken? In one study conducted in British Columbia, 84% of Indigenous people described personal experiences of racism and discrimination that discouraged them from seeking necessary care. In a similar study in Toronto, 27% of the urban Indigenous population reported unmet health needs, more than twice the national average. When such outcomes are combined with the legacy of colonial policies, it can create not only hesitancy, but potentially also a high risk of contracting COVID-19 due to factors such as greater levels of overcrowded housing, homelessness, and incarceration. Given these dynamics, it would be natural to expect that vaccine rates for Indigenous people would lag behind rates in the rest of the country. Fortunately, as of early June, the rate of fully vaccinated people in Indigenous communities was 89%, well ahead of the rates in Canada as a whole and Europe. While government programs to encourage vaccinations may have helped achieve this outcome, credit must also go largely to Indigenous communities themselves. Indigenous organizations such as the National Association of Friendship Centers, which provides services to Indigenous people in urban areas, responded quickly to the outbreak of COVID-19, using a wraparound service model that provided a holistic response to the pandemic. Friendship centers were best equipped to help community members in need. These efforts included a Take Action in COVID social media campaign specifically designed to dispel myths, demonstrate the safety and efficiency of vaccines, and to encourage urban Indigenous people to get the jab. Such initiatives demonstrate the importance of broad-based health services that go beyond the traditional clinics and hospitals. Organizations such as friendship centers may not be healthcare institutions in the traditional sense, but can often provide services to understand communities in ways clinics and hospitals can't. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Now it's Madam Rajonen.
Thank you. I come from Finland. I have previously worked as a pharmacist and worked in a pharmacy. Pharmacy and healthcare staff have a lot to do with vaccines. Vaccination, according to the vaccination program, are free of charge in Finland. Vaccinations are given at healthcare facilities. In addition, you can buy vaccines for tourism, for example, from a pharmacy. It is important that vaccines and the right up-to-date information on vaccines are available. There were also nasty phenomena in Finland during COVID vaccination. Vacue information was disseminated on social media, which may include rumors, gossip, and assumptions. The best way to prevent rumors is to spread the right information. I think it is important to invest in making the right information available. This will be even more important in the future. Maybe European countries could work together on this. This is fourth round of vaccines in Finland. During COVID vaccination, there was more discussion about the possibility that pharmacies could handle vaccination. Pharmacies are trusted For example, COVID vaccination and tourist vaccination could be provided through pharmacies. Finland is undergoing a major healthcare reform. There is a shortage of resources and money. There are up to 822 pharmacies in Finland. There are pharmacies close to everyone, the health centers does not. The pharmacies have a highly trained staff. In Finland, it would be easy to arrange more training for pharmacists so that vaccination would be given here. In pharmacies in Finland, attention is paid to counseling and it is of high quality and based on information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I move to Sir Christopher Chope.
Mr. President, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Paragraph 13.1.3 of the draft resolution rightly calls on Council of Europe countries to ensure that they have, and I quote, effective systems for monitoring potential adverse effects of vaccines and independent compensation programs are in place. Sadly, in respect of COVID-19 vaccines, that is not happening. There has been a tendency to cover up the potential adverse effects of those vaccines, and few countries have actually got effective compensation programs yet in place. The United Kingdom has a vaccine damage payment scheme, but that denies that it is a compensation scheme. It requires proof of causation, is capped at £120,000 and is only available to those suffering more than 60% disability. It has also been subject to unacceptable bureaucracy and delay, and the first compensation awards were only made this very week. Mr. President, tens of thousands of people have suffered death or serious injury as a result of COVID-19 vaccines. Yet governments have been in denial about these facts, resorting to obfuscation, dissembling, and in some cases, downright lies about the vaccines being absolutely safe for everyone. And those concerns have been echoed in this debate by Mr. Frides and by Ms. Arpadari. An example from the United Kingdom. Last week, I asked the Secretary of State for Health whether he accepted that some people have died as a direct result of COVID-19 vaccines. He avoided giving a straight answer to that question, and he said words to the effect that vaccines don't always deliver the desired results for some people. Well, that was an underestimate, wasn't it? Because an understatement, we know that coroners have concluded in following detailed inquests that people have died as a result of COVID-19 vaccines. And indeed, one of the cases resolved this week is an award of £120,000 to somebody's widow, and that person was widowed because her husband died of COVID-19 vaccine damage. And so that sort of denial is actually undermining the state of vaccine confidence, because people aren't fools. They know from their friends that those who did the right thing and got vaccinated are often now suffering permanent life-changing conditions. And that's why this report is so important, because it should be emphasizing the way in which vaccine hesitancy can be countered by ensuring that there's open and transparent debate and proper compensation.
Thank you very much. And now our last speaker from the floor in this is Mr. Ramirez Baba. Is he here? It doesn't look like it. No. Then we have completed the list of speakers. And I call on Madam Leiter as the rapporteur to reply to the debate, and you have five minutes. Yes.
Muchas gracias, presidente. Quiero agradecer a todos los oradores que han intervenido en este debate, porque el escucharles siempre enriquece y, por tanto, se han dicho cosas muy interesantes. Creo que han coincidido muchos de los oradores en lo que era el texto del informe, ¿no? En la filosofía del informe. Si bien es cierto que se ha producido, ha habido también en la Cámara algún malentendido, como que decir que las vacunas de la COVID-19 son experimentales. Desde luego que no, han sido probadas y autorizadas por la FDA y por la EMA. Lo que han sido las vacunas, por el hecho de que se hayan podido fabricar en un tiempo tan récord, es debido precisamente a todo el conocimiento mundial que hay sobre las vacunas y que todo el mundo trabajó conjuntamente para lograr este éxito. Creo que es una historia de éxito, no de fracaso. Por consiguiente, eso es también uno de los mitos que se usan. Las vacunas están testadas, aprobadas y han demostrado su eficacia, como que ya he dicho que hoy sale precisamente en los medios que han reducido el fallecimiento de personas que han padecido la COVID-19 en 20 millones. También quiero señalar que, lo han dicho algunos oradores, que efectivamente en cuanto a las enfermedades infecciosas son útiles, muy útiles. La herramienta más eficaz que tenemos son las vacunas, pero también, por supuesto, todas las medidas higiénico-sanitarias acompañantes, que ya nos los enseñaron casi desde niños, por lo menos en las sociedades occidentales: lavar las manos, tener cuidado en el momento que estemos enfermos o nos encontremos mal, no estar con otras personas a las que podamos contagiar. Bueno, muchas de las medidas que creo que están en la cabeza de todos y en las que hemos sido educados. Creo que este debate, el informe, no trata solo de la vacuna de la COVID-19. La COVID-19 es una parte del informe. Estamos hablando de vacunas. En esta Cámara ya ha habido varios informes sobre la COVID-19. En este momento el punto esencial es las dudas que se están planteando en la sociedad contra la vacunación en general, no solo de la COVID-19, sino de las otras enfermedades infecciosas como el sarampión, la rubeola, etc. Y lo que sí se ha demostrado que las vacunas son una de las mejores herramientas que tenemos para luchar contra estas enfermedades. No quiere decir que no podamos volver a adquirir la enfermedad. Volviendo a la COVID-19, todos sabemos que hay gente que la ha tenido 3 y 4 veces, pero la manera de que nuestro organismo reacciona a la enfermedad es muy diferente, evitando en muchísimos casos el riesgo de muerte, sobre todo, que es de lo que se trata, y también de los problemas que ocasiona lo que se ha llamado el largo COVID, que el mantenimiento del COVID, de sintomatología COVID. Creo que tenemos una herramienta eficaz en nuestras manos que sin duda hay que manejar con otras medidas higiénico-sanitarias también muy importantes. Y no olvidar que, como dijo mi compañera Nerea CEO de la delegación española, que los virus no tienen pasaportes y viajan por todos los lados libremente. Por consiguiente, lo digo en el informe, pero lo recalco, es necesario una cobertura universal, que las vacunas puedan llegar a todo el mundo, que su acceso sea universal. Y también otra herramienta eficaz es el fortalecimiento de los sistemas de salud. Yo vengo de España, nosotros tenemos un Servicio Nacional de Salud universal, equitativo, cohesionado y de calidad. Y creo que eso ha ayudado mucho en la confianza que tiene la gente en su sistema de salud, ha hecho que España fuera uno de los países, junto con otros muchos de los oradores que están aquí presentes, que lograra esos objetivos. Es fundamental también la confianza en el sistema, en la atención primaria, que es, digamos, el primer escalón médico y el que está más próximo al ciudadano, y que es el que en donde la cercanía hace que se pueda explicar más y mejor las maneras de luchar contra las enfermedades, a través de vacunas, a través de las medidas higiénico-sanitarias y a través, lógicamente, de tratamientos médicos cuando se requiere. Creo que ha sido un debate interesante. Yo agradezco incluso a los que han claramente he estado en desacuerdo con parte del informe, pero agradezco a todos su contribución. Gracias.
Thank you very much indeed. Now we move to Madam Olyena Komenyenko, who is online, to see whether she wishes to comment. And if you do, you have 3 minutes.
Dear colleagues, I would like to thank to the rapporteur, Ms. Carmen Leite, for her excellent and timely report. Like her, our committee is convinced that addressing suboptimal vaccination coverage is a matter of human rights protection and should be a priority for Council of Europe member states. As such, member states must take urgent action and acknowledge public responsibility for lowering barriers to vaccine uptake in full respect of the principles of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. Strategies to comprehensively address inadequate immunization coverage should address the root causes of this problem. As pointed out by the rapporteur, reasons for suboptimal vaccine uptake are context-specific. They vary broadly and include social, economic, and cultural barriers, lack of access, availability, inadequate quality of services, and attitudes to vaccination. The committee also agrees that more needs to be done at national and international levels to fight misinformation and disinformation regarding vaccines and build up health literacy. Our committee fully supports the rapporteur and agrees that quality vaccination services must be available and accessible to all people within the state's jurisdiction, and that this includes provision of adequate vaccine supplies, free vaccination for all, and better follow-up from the healthcare system. Moreover, when supply is inadequate, the principle of equitable access to vaccines should be ensured. As pandemic demonstrated, our collective health is only as strong as our weakest link. That is why I would like to reiterate the rapporteur's call for strong cooperation between member states, not only on a regional level, but also to ensure equitable allocation and uptake of vaccines on the international level. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed. Now that means that we have reached the end of the debate, and the debate is now closed. And the Committee on Social Affairs, Health and Sustainable Development has presented a draft resolution, that's document 15542, to which no amendments have been tabled. We will now proceed to vote on the draft resolution contained in document 15542. The vote is now open. Is there another vote? Is there another vote?
No.
No.
C'est bon. Le vote est clos.
Sorry, the vote is now closed. And can we see the results, please? And there we are. The resolution has been approved by 27 votes for, 2 against, and 9 amendments. So, the draft resolution in document 15542 is adopted. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And now we will have just a couple of minutes of break while we change chairman and before we move on to the free debate. Thank you.
Thank you.
dear colleagues, we now come to the free debate. I remind members that this debate is for topics not already on the agenda agreed on Monday morning. Speaking time will be limited to 3 minutes. I call first Mr. Bjarni Jonsson. You have 3 minutes, and please start by identifying the topic you wish to raise. Mr. Jonsson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam. The negative impacts of climate change, looking at ecosystems, biodiversity, and human communities at global and regional levels, are fast deteriorating, where climate hazards interact, creating severe vulnerability. Climate and weather extremes are increasingly driving migration in all regions. Climate change is contributing to humanitarian crises around the world and climate injustice. This should not come as a news to us, but it was underlined in the latest IPCC report that shows greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise. According to the report, maintaining the resilience of biodiversity and functions of ecosystems at the global level depends on effective and sensible conservation of up to 50% of the Earth's land, freshwater and ocean areas. It is apparent that current plans to address climate change are not ambitious enough to limit warming to 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial levels. A threshold scientists believe is necessary to avoid even more catastrophic impacts. If global warming exceeds 1.5 degrees, many human and natural systems are at risk. Energy transition to green options is key in this regard, and it leads to the energy security and energy independence of Europe that is being called for so strongly now. Further, climate change and war are now jointly severely threatening the food security, adding to climate injustice. Madam President, it is of utmost importance that the Assembly use the newly established network of contact parliamentarians for a healthy environment to raise this issue within the Assembly and the Council of Europe. As we need to take on the unfolding tragedy in Ukraine caused by the horrific invasion of Russian forces with both strength and wisdom, we not only need to secure peace for Europe for the time to come, but also keep peace and unity to resolve the deadly threats to the planet due to climate change.
Thank you, Mr. Jonsson. The next speaker on our list is Mr. Bob van Pareren. Mr. Pareren, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a free debate, so I want to bring up some points about what has happened this week. I felt very bad about this debate we had yesterday about United Kingdom. It looked like as if this country was in a way doing that bad things that I think, yeah, is this not overreacting on the situation? There are more important things to discuss, and what I really recommend to be discussed in this debate, in this hemicycle, are two situations of abuses of human rights in the Netherlands. There's an urgent situation now. There are people in the so-called allowance affair in the Netherlands. The tax department has ruined lives of parents and children based on racism, prejudice, and discrimination. And as a consequence, many had to leave their homes, whole families without homes now, and children were taken apart from their parents. It's a complete disaster, and it is an emotional big boom in the Netherlands. It should have the attention of the human rights organization as we are here in Strasbourg. The other point of abuse of human rights in the Netherlands is the climate hysteria. Of course, we think that the milieu should become really be better, and we can do a lot about that, but it must not be a hysteria. In our country, in the Netherlands, it leads to farmers that has to stop their business, their life work, that their successors can't continue the work their parents has done so long. And the farmers are quite important, not only for our country in the Netherlands, but also for Europe. because in fact there are a lot of food from the Netherlands exported worldwide, and especially also in Europe. And based on the climate rules, there is a restriction now in Holland that are 100 to 200 times stronger than in our neighboring countries, Belgium and Germany. That's strange and unacceptable for the people. And especially now when Ukraine is this terrible situation by the Russian invasion and terror over there, food is also restricted from that side. So I think, Mr. Chair, this is important to bring up. And I'd like to close with the following. We had in this meeting this week a proposal from Ukraine delegate to have a separate Ukraine session on the situation over there. This really needs to be discussed here, and I really recommend that to follow as our organization. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And the next speaker on our list is Mr. Eduard Akhayanian. Mr. Akhayanian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, on the 13th of September 2021, this Assembly adopted a resolution where, amongst other things, it stated, and I quote, "Both Azerbaijan and Armenia have binding obligations to repatriate prisoners of war and release civilian prisoners without delay after the cessation of active hostilities. Considers that the clear intention of Articles 8 of the trilateral statement was the exchange of all detained persons without distinction as to the status assigned by one or other of the parties. Calls on the Azerbaijani authorities to release all remaining captives and return them to Armenia without further delay. Dear colleagues, it is a fact that the Armenian side has fully abided to its obligation in this matter by returning all prisoners of war and other captives without any precondition. In the same resolution, Armenia was to hand all the landmines to Azerbaijan to avoid any further casualties derived from this issue, which the Armenian side has fulfilled by 100%. We did this because we regard these as purely humanitarian causes which cannot and should not become subject to bargain. Whereas after almost a year from the adoption of this resolution, Azerbaijan still keeps at least 38 prisoners of war as hostages to gain whatever political advantage during the ongoing peace negotiations with Armenia. Dear friends, I just want to remind you that this appalling and deplorable act of treating human lives as bargaining chips is carried out in the 21st century by a member state of the Council of Europe. I would like to remind you that the conditions for membership of Council of Europe are pluralistic democracy, the rule of law, and respect for human rights. Only those countries which fulfill these criteria can accede. I will leave on to you, to your subjective assessment, the degree of pluralistic democracy of a country which has been ruled by members of the same family for over 30 years and will most probably continue the beautiful tradition for another 30 years. However, my belief is that the root cause of this impudent posture lies in Azerbaijan's historical record of total neglection of the judgments delivered by the European Court of Human Rights. Because the latter is the only abiding mechanism which is supposed to guarantee at least one of the three conditions of membership in this organization, that is, respect of human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to draw your attention to the following shameful statistics. Throughout the last 10 years, 97% of judgments delivered by the ECHR have not been executed by Azerbaijan. And when I say shameful, I mean it for this council, because it shows that this organization should have taken proper action in either introducing new mechanisms of enforcement or by simply denying Azerbaijan membership of this organization. After all, if there is zero effort to comply to any of the three conditions of membership, can anyone tell why Azerbaijan is still a member of the Council of Europe? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is Mr. Mikhail Popsoy. Mr. Popsoy, you have the floor.
Dear colleagues, yesterday was a historic day for the Republic of Moldova. My country was granted a candidacy status in the European Union. This is indeed a symbolic day for many Moldovans, as it is also the anniversary of Moldova's sovereignty. In times of great peril, this is a strong morale boost to our citizens. This is also a testament to the determination of the people of Moldova to live in a free, democratic society. In years past, the Republic of Moldova and its people have stood up for democratic values and defeated an oligarch who was terrorizing the country. In the last few years, the Moldovan people were also successful in getting rid of a pro-Russian leader who was only concerned with graft and serving the aggressor. Also, in the last few years, the Moldovan people have managed to elect the first woman president in the Republic of Moldova, a pro-European strong majority in the parliament of the country, and thus indicating that the people of the Republic of Moldova want to remain firmly anchored into the European value system, thus repudiating the aggression that is happening in our region. The citizens of Moldova have stood together with the Ukrainian people by hosting the largest number of refugees per capita. We have opened our arms, our homes, and we have provided everything we have to our neighbors and our friends. And by supporting us in this time of great peril, the European Union is showing a tremendous sign of solidarity with Ukraine and the Republic of Moldova. And it is also a sign of repudiation of aggression. It is a strong message to the aggressor that the European Union remains united, strong, and it will remain free as long as it stands true to its values. And by granting Ukraine and the Republic of Moldova a candidacy status, it shows just that. We have no illusions about the process. It will take a long time, but we remain committed to all the reforms that need to be taken, because at the end of the day, these reforms are in the interest of the people of Moldova, to boost Moldovan democracy, to promote human rights, rule of law. All this are in the interest of Moldovan people. So I thank you, dear colleagues, for all the support that you have granted the citizens of the Republic of Moldova in these very, very difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Nigar Arpadaray. Ms. Arpadaray, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, I am from Azerbaijan. Our region, South Caucasus, has seen lots of challenges. Armenian occupation of Azerbaijani lands affected the region and impeded development. It deprived us of many chances during 3 decades it continued. But now it's a new era. After the occupation of Karabakh and eastern Zangezur regions of Azerbaijan, departure of Armenian occupational forces, we have a new situation, new chances and new risks. Due to the current international situation, the interruption of logistics in Eastern Europe due to the ongoing war, South Caucasus is becoming increasingly important for the logistical connection of Central Asia to Europe and Europe. Today, it's very important to use the chances that were given to us by the new situation. Armenian MP has just mentioned the trilateral statement, and I'm really happy that he remembers that they do have the obligations. I would also like to remind that one of the clauses of the statement signed between Armenia and Azerbaijan is the obligation by Armenia to provide for unimpeded connection between western regions of Azerbaijan and Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan exclave for people, goods and transport. This corridor, going through the western Zangezur region, is the historical connecting route uniting the western Azerbaijani lands. Azerbaijanis used to live there, but they were all ethnically cleansed. The names of towns and villages were changed. Total destruction of their historical heritage took place. Zangezur, which is used to unite parts of South Caucasus, became a dividing wall for 3 long decades of occupation of western Azerbaijani regions by Armenia. Opening of Zangezur corridor is important for humanitarian purposes, but it is also strategically important international transport route. It would connect economies all the way from Central Asia to China, to the southeastern Europe and even the Middle East. It would again turn into the South Caucasus into the vital crossroad, a reborn Silk Road. The importance of such corridor is difficult to overestimate, in particular in current international situation. Armenia, which committed to the opening of this corridor in November 2020, is, however, avoiding the implementation of it for more than a year and a half, using all possible pretexts and winning time. The positive economic impact of such corridor is obvious to all. Its political importance is undoubted. The formal commitment by Armenia is there. People of Nakhchivan, part of Azerbaijan, who suffered from blockade of traditional links for long 3 decades are waiting. So my question is, when Armenia is going to comply, and what is Council of Europe planning to do about it? How long do we have to wait? Dear colleagues, we want to see actions. No words, but actions, as peace and sustainable development in our region will only be reached if all sides comply with their international obligations. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is Mr. Raphael Husseino. Mr. Husseino, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, dear colleagues. There is no good war, because any war destroys, ruins human lives, and brings tears. Therefore, the wise saying of ancient Roman philosopher Cicero, expressed 21 centuries ago, remains valid today, that a bad peace is better than a good war. In 2017, we witnessed an event bearing important historical and symbolic meaning. A tram line has been opened between our longtime native Strasbourg and the German city of Kiel. I confess I welcomed this event with sorrow, which is joyful by essence, because I am aware of this recent history. I know how fierce battles for Strasbourg were fought. This city was either German or French. In the meantime, an impossible boat guarded by bodyguards. Now, there is a tram running from here to there. I know a lot of people who live in Strasbourg work in the next German city. And a few days ago, I was in Karabakh. I was in the beautiful city of Shusha, which is officially declared the cultural capital of Azerbaijan and historically has occupied this position. The next time we had visited there together with the participants of the major international conference. First, we flew from Baku to Fizuli, and from there we arrived by bus to Shusha. The territories that have been occupied for 30 years have been completely destroyed, and the occupier did not set stone upon stone. Nonetheless, in a short time, so huge work has been done here that life begins to revive. We were in Shusha, and Khankandi, another city of Azerbaijan, now inhabited by Armenians, was clearly visible from the mountains. Today, Russian troops are stationed between Khankandi and Shusha. Our car was driving near the border checkpoint. The Armenians, busy with their daily lives, saw us and we saw them. I was thinking about Strasbourg. I thought that the day would come, and soon that day would come, when there would be no peacekeepers or so-called soldiers between our this and that city. I am not saying that the tram line will connect our Khankandi and Shusha like Strasbourg and Kiel. However, I hope that soon the peace will move forward step by step and daily buses will come and go here and there. Perhaps some revanchists who have not learned the lessons of recent history think differently and are driven by a desire to create new conflicts. Nevertheless, I am also positive that both Armenians and Azerbaijanis who have felt the pain of 30-year armed conflict and who have managed to look at the truth with a vigilant eye, yearn for and understand that there is no better choice than peace. The Assembly, the day is not far off when intercity buses will be running there, between Khankandi and Shusha. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is Mr. Zia Altunialdis. Mr. Altunialdis, you have the floor.
Dear President, dear colleagues, I'm going to talk about energy security. When we look at the global developments, one of the most important common problems which has come to the fore again recently is the issue of energy security. Although energy security has been discussed for years, the problems on this issue has become increasingly multidimensional and complex. Especially, Russian aggression against Ukraine has shown how fragile the energy markets are in terms of stability of energy supply, mainly due to the dependence on Russia. This situation has brought direct negative effects on the global economy, which has already deteriorated due to the pandemic. As a result, the importance of diversifying energy resources has naturally increased. Dear colleagues, in this respect, the most important element is the transition to green energy, which is tried to be realized at the global level with the goal of zero carbon emission in the face of climate change. Promoting the use of renewable resources is undoubtedly one of the important strategies to ensure energy security. However, the transition to clean energy will also have major implications for economies as well. This transition requires better planning, coordination, and governance at the national, regional, and global level. Some of the important elements in this transition are, of course, the problems of financing and time. It will take decades and will incur a significant cost due to the new investment in infrastructure and innovation. For this reason, countries need to maintain a balance for a sustainable development. On the other hand, discoveries of new resources in certain geographies bring along conflicts between countries, such as in the Arctic and Eastern Mediterranean region. The resources should be an important incentive for working together, especially the long-term uncertainty of hydrocarbon resources reduces the reasons for conflict and increases the importance of cooperation. Turkey, as an important transition area, offers great potential to be a hub for import routes from Caucasia, Central Asia, Middle East to Europe. In this regard, my dear friend, I would like to remind you the importance of the TANAP and TAP as a project of central part of the Southern Gas Corridor to reduce Europe's energy dependency on Russia. Turkey, with its geographical position and existing infrastructure, is the most suitable transit route of Eastern Mediterranean gas to Europe. To conclude, my dear friend, international cooperation is extremely important at the point of ensuring energy security on the one hand and promoting the green transformation of economies on the other. I thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is Mr. Irakli Cikovani. Mr. Cikovani, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to talk about yesterday's decision by the European Council. The European Council has granted the candidate status to our friendly nations of Ukraine and Moldova and has recognized the European perspective of Georgia. I congratulate Moldova and Ukraine on their candidacy and, of course, recognize the important step and important chapter that Georgia steps in terms of the Euro-Atlantic European integration. This is the great challenge that we have upon us. We realize that the decision that was made is not made based on the performance, but rather has its political roots that is defined by the aggressive war of Russian Federation against Ukraine. We understand that this is the momentum and it's the geopolitical situation that determines the current situation. But I have to acknowledge that Georgia has been a top performer in every reform, in every sphere. Georgia has been successful in tackling corruption. Georgia is one of the best countries in budget transparency. Georgia has best indexes in human rights protection, in ensuring the rights of the minorities. And I'm very proud that on a previous session in this hemicycle, this was recognized by the adoption of the resolution on the monitoring on the obligations of the accession of Georgia to the Council of Europe. And that resolution clearly states that enormous progress has been made by Georgia during the last 8 or 9 years. I have to say that Georgia never was the backlegger in terms of reforms. It was always a champion and remains such a champion in ensuring the European life for our citizens. And I have to underline, and you well know, all these reforms have been undertaken while 20% of my country is occupied, while we are constantly under fear of the Russian aggression, and while the Georgians are kidnapped, and while there is a constant barbarization and the attempts of the annexation of the Georgian territories. We have been knocking on the European door since for centuries, and we will pursue this goal, and this goal will be accomplished. I'm very proud to be the part of the team who has enshrined the European aspirations of Georgia in the Georgian constitution. I'm very proud of the Georgian people who 85% support the European integration. But I deplore any person or group of persons, politicians, or any kind of unions that try to patronize this attitude and it streamline it towards the revolt and towards the chaos. This is totally unacceptable, and this is unfortunately what is happening at this moment back in Georgia. I will finish soon, Mr. Chairman. I have to say, we clearly have a position in Georgian politics that we don't go into the debates with our Ukrainian colleagues when we know they are going through hardships. But it was very unfortunate, the statements that were made in this hemicycle a few days ago. And it insulted the modern-day exceptional philanthropist in Georgia, Mr. Bidzina Ivanishvili, and also while he was in the politics, he was one of the first who spearheaded totalitarianism and fought for the dignity and the peace of the Georgian people. Prime Minister Garibashvili, the day before yesterday, clearly outlined what is our plan. Our plan from tomorrow is to work hard and to make sure that every precondition there is in the European Council's decision will be met. Once again, Georgia was the champion and will remain the champion of the reforms on the European continent. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is Mr. Sorin Titus Munkacu. Mr. Munkacu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Chairman. I will talk about the development of the World Health Organization. At the 75th session of the World Health Assembly, the Biden administration proposed 13 amendments to the World Health Organization International Health Regulations. These amendments give control over the declaration of public health emergency in any member state to the Director General. Consequently, states are deprived of their fundamental obligations in relation to the ability to detect, assess, report, and respond to public health emergencies. The proposed amendments set up an emergency committee that will impose, without the approval of the states, health measures that they must implement in the case of declared public emergency on their territory. States that do not comply with this recommendation of the Director General may be sanctioned by a number of international bodies, starting with financial, commercial, political, and multinational corporations. The approach is clear, an affront to democratic accountability and a clear challenge to the human rights. It gives decision-making power to unelected World Health Organization technocrats to decide on the health measure that the nationals of the states concerned are bound by the treaty to adopt and execute. In our view, there is no freedom without sovereignty and without the democratic responsibility of those elected to represent the interests of their citizens. Technocrats have no direct responsibility for the interests of these citizens. By opening the negotiation for an international agreement on pandemic prevention, namely pandemic treaty, the World Health Organization intends to eliminate states and their parliaments from the decision-making process when addressing the health emergency. Subsequent policy decision legally binding is going to be made by the non-elected and unaccountable technocrats. Particular attention should be paid to the draft because if adopted by member states, it will become the new World Health Organization constitution that, according to Article 8, will prevail over the state competency. The Parliamentary Assembly should examine this situation and provide a comprehensive response to this attempt by the World Health Organization and other interest parties to displace state sovereignty. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Vladimir Vardanyan. Mr. Vardanyan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It used to be said that the best way of defense is attacking somebody, and unfortunately trying to keep the calm situation in this hemisphere cycle until now. Our Azeri colleagues trying to attack now us, and I obliged to answer. And I would like just to say, first of all, Madam Arpadarai, we were, we are, and we will be open for opening all kind of communication and transportation in our region. This is the first. But, ladies and gentlemen, international law is not just a puzzle when you're choosing the favorite pieces and says that this is international law. International law is a single, unique phenomenon. You cannot divide any part of it. What I'm hearing now, what all of you hear now, Madam Arpadarai said that no, we don't need an open communication. We would like to have a corridor from Azerbaijan to Nakhichevan, because historically it is ours. So what does it mean under the UN Charter? This means the following. We demanding this. If you not give us this, we will conquer you. This is direct address to aggression. This is imminent threat to the security of the region. And all of us keep silence. Nobody would like to react. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I would like to stress, we are in favor of opening of all transportation, all communication means, but without any sovereign corridor logic, because it is undermined the very basics of UN Charter. Unfortunately, Mr. Husseino left this hemicycle. A couple of days ago I said that this hemicycle is not only for speaking, but also for the listening. I think you should be here and to listen. When you are comparing situation in Shushi with Strasbourg, just walking on the streets, try to see that each and every street have two names. Because this country respects the people who live there, who would live here. And you will see French and German mentioning of the streets, the plates. What's happened in Shushi? You are calling after, in brackets, after these years of, in brackets, occupation, you destroyed this. We renewed the mosque, an ancient and very important mosque in Shushi. What is Shushi now? And nobody would like to go there to visit it. Churches are destroyed. The name Shushi in Armenian is destroyed. Madam Arpadarai, we have more than 38 POWs in your prisons. How many times you visited them? How many times you said to your leadership, to this family state, that they should be released not only because of trilateral statement, but because of Geneva Convention, and because that it is the values of these organizations, and we would like to be a pillar of this organization. I understood that all of you sick and tired of these discussions, but we have people, live people, which are each day under the threat to being tortured in Azerbaijani prison. And nobody would react to it. Sometimes I think that I'm speaking and nobody listens to me. Thank you, and sorry for being so emotional.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Vlad Patrincia. I don't see him in the hemicycle. Oh. So we move on to the next speaker, Mr. Haik Mamyanian. Mr. Mamyanian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that there was Stone Age, Golden Era, etc. I do think that now we are living a rubber era of European values. They bend, they fold at the pleasure of politicians. And yesterday's discussion regarding the UK government's reaction on the decision of ECHR proves that. Here are some more facts. European Parliament voted 4 documents urging the importance of immediate return of POWs inadmissibility of social terror, i.e. leaving people of Artsakh without gas supply in terms of severe winter, pointing the aggressor a 40-day war, and it had no consequences for COE member state. Dear lady, you were calling my motherland historic Azerbaijani state territory. One of your colleagues in Milli Mejlis was already preparing right for Azerbaijan for a new aggression regarding the corridor. And Mr. Husseino, we are not revanchists. We are patriots. More than that, no one speaks about the fact that COE member state occupied internationally recognized sovereign territory of Armenia and just refuses to leave. There are some other facts regarding the internal politics of my country. For example, less than 1 month ago, police brutally beats and uses stun grenades on the peaceful protesters on the doorsteps of the EU embassy in Yerevan. And I'm not speaking figuratively. I'm speaking literally on the doorstep of the EU embassy in Yerevan. Journalists and oppositional MPs weren't allowed to attend an event regarding the freedom of speech. No, you heard it correct. Journalists weren't allowed to attend an event regarding freedom of speech, and the EU officials back then in my country were attending that event. The hate speech is so much accumulated by the government in my country that people were killed, and the motivation was really political, extremely political. There was a tape which goes viral when 2 people, the ex-president and the current president of the judiciary body, highest judiciary body, discuss how they are going to create cases, fabricate cases against the oppositional leaders. So the reason for these disasters are populists and dictators. And the first one changed, become dictators very fast. And this is a pandemic, and we have to fight it tooth and nails, just we were fighting COVID-19. So, ladies and gentlemen, I was told that values are rock solid. I refuse to believe that Europe has set a blind eye on democracy and human rights. I refuse to believe that Europe has forgotten the right of self-determination, which is simply a right to live for people of Nagorno-Karabakh. Europe used to be a flagman of Christian democratic values. Even if you decided to abandon that flag, we are going to wave it proudly, because it's our cross to bear. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Mehmet Mehdi Eker. Mr. Eker, you have the floor. Okay.
Point of order. Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Yeah, can we please? 30 seconds, okay. Can I start?
Madam, you have a point of order.
Okay.
Take care that it's point of order, eh?
Okay, it's point of order. Trilateral statement, clause 9. The Republic of Armenia guarantees safety of transport links between western regions of Republic of Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic. Signed by Pashinyan.
Thank you very much,
Prime Minister
Madam.
Pashinyan. I was just being accused of saying some kind of, I don't know, claims. So this is signed by Prime Minister Pashinyan. Before saying something, please read and then say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. What I wanted to say, this was not a point of order, this was a personal statement. You are entitled on... sorry, yes. Sorry, please sit down, I explain you. You had the right to take the floor, I gave you the floor. I only tell you this was not a point of order, this was a personal statement, and you are entitled to do so, and you are given the floor. And now we continue with the debate. The next on our list is Mr. Mehmet Eker from Turkey. You have the floor, sir.
Dear colleagues, I would like to make a brief talk about the freedom of movement, which is an important condition for free development of individuals and enjoyment of many other rights. Unfortunately, we observe that some member states abuse the Schengen system by imposing restrictive procedures for Turkish citizens as well as other non-EU citizens. Excessively long bureaucratic procedures and unexplained visa denials curtail the enjoyment of the freedom of movement. This is incompatible with the European Convention of Human Rights and in violation of the rulings of the Strasbourg Court. Moreover, abuse of the Schengen system adversely affects fair trade and economic relations. For this reason, Turkish delegation have initiated to prepare a motion for resolution which aims at addressing the shortcomings in the system and the abuse of the system. The purpose is to identify the problem and to help resolve it so that non-EU citizens of the Council of Europe could enjoy the freedom of movement and other subsequent rights to the fullest possible extent. Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, President.
Thank you, Mehmet, for your contribution. Next in the debate, I call Mr. Erken Gadiri from Azerbaijan. Erken, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear colleagues, initially I had in mind something else to say, but having heard of what our Armenian and Azerbaijani colleagues said this morning, I can't help but to answer some of those. Many years ago, I promised to myself not to be engaged in disputes of this kind, and I kept loyal to my self-imposed obligations. Because I've seen a lot, I've participated in many debates which turned out to be verbal battles between Armenians and Azerbaijanis in many places in Europe in different formats, as academician, as opposition member, and many. Then I just dropped and I said that I will never participate in that. And even here, this is my third year of membership in this honorable assembly. I'm never allowed to make any comment on Armenia, on Karabakh. Only once, when resolution on humanitarian consequences of the conflict was discussed, I opposed some of the amendments made by honorable members of Armenian delegation, but those were legal arguments. And I simply call to all our Armenian friends and also Azerbaijani friends to stop abusing the time of our colleagues. Maybe we could just sit together, you and us, no mediators, somewhere in a very relaxed atmosphere, and talk about the issues that disturb us. Just you and us. I mean, it's just a wish, because, again, this tends to have same results over and over again. There's a term I once came across many years ago in the Harvard Business Review. I liked the terminology, that definition so much that I memorized it. And the term is called skilled incompetence. The definition is as follows. Skilled incompetence is a situation where people are very good at doing things which tend to have unhappy circumstances, even though they seem to be the right thing to do. Dear Armenians, you and us have become masters of skilled incompetence. We waste our time in useless verbal battles. Let us just sit in a friendly environment and talk without mediators. Thank you.
Thank you, Erken. Next in the debate, I call Mr. Markus Wichel from Sweden. Markus, you have the floor. But Markus has left the building like Elvis did before. So we go to the next speaker on our list, and that's Madam Sevin Fatalieva from Azerbaijan. Sevin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, today the topic of green energy sources is of interest of the whole world. They talk about it in news, and environmentalists urge the heads of the countries to switch to green technologies as soon as possible in order to stop the climate crisis. Many countries, including the European Union, have already begun to implement their own Green Deal programs where renewable energy sources play a key role. Since the start of the pandemic, the global economy has stagnated, which contributed to the growth of renewable energy production by 70% against the backdrop of an overall drop in electricity demand by 5%. This clearly demonstrates the increasing role of alternative energy resources in the future. Last year alone, the share of energy produced by renewable sources increased by 5%, and in the next 5 years, an increase of 50% is expected. Already by 2025, it's expected that green energy will outstrip the volume of electricity generated by burning coal in terms of reproduction. Today, my country, Azerbaijan, is making a targeted transition to renewable energy sources. The development of renewable energy is a priority to our country, and it's certainly impossible to quickly switch from traditional methods of generating electricity to environmentally friendly ones, immediately abandoning the traditional energy sources. Azerbaijan has adopted a strategy for smooth transition from traditional methods to new ones while maintaining a reasonable proportion and realistic pace. There is great potential in the territories liberated from occupation. We all know that during the period of occupation for 30 years, the Armenian side destroyed the entire infrastructure, all the buildings, our historical religious monuments on the land that were under occupation at that time, and there are numerous documents and photos proving this. They also destroyed more than 30 hydroelectric power plants in the Kalbajar and Lachin regions. And we, having already started large-scale work on the liberated lands, paid great attention, including to the electric power industry. The alternative energy potential of the liberated territories of Azerbaijan includes almost all types of renewable energy sources, including hydro, solar, wind, and geothermal. 25% of Azerbaijan's drinking water sources are concentrated in Karabakh, which gives grounds to talk about the huge hydropower potential of Karabakh. Energy supply of Karabakh will be provided by renewable energy sources. 4 small hydropower plants have already been put into operation on the liberated lands, and 5 more will start operating in the near future. The goal of Azerbaijani government is to completely transform the region into a green energy zone by 2050, as well as to reduce carbon dioxide emission by 40%. By 2030, renewable energy sources are expected to account for 30% of Azerbaijan's electricity generation, and it's estimated that the potential of renewable energy sources in Azerbaijan is 37,000 megawatts, of which about 10,000 were made public after the liberation of the country's territory. The energy policy of the Azerbaijani government will allow our state to achieve its commitment under the Paris Climate Agreement to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 35% by 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I would say that green energy is a way to a healthy environment, is a way to our future, and we all should make our energy strategies to become environmentally friendly. Thank you.
Okay. Let's wait. Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, I was doing business. Mr. Patrincia asked me a question about participating in the debate, and we will accommodate you, but at the end of the list, Vlad. Now I first give the floor to Madam Konul Nuruliyeva from Azerbaijan. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the floor. Today, unfortunately, we are living in a world where there are several actively ongoing armed conflicts, sexual abuse, and other human rights violations committed against women are considered inevitable during and after the war times. Azerbaijan is also one of those countries that experienced all of the negative sides of the armed conflict. Over the past 30 years, thousands of Azerbaijani women have suffered or become refugees as a result of the First and Second Karabakh Wars. However, after the liberation of Azerbaijani lands as a result of the 44 Days War, new era was started in our region. Now, integration and cooperation are central to Azerbaijan's vision about the future of the South Caucasus, and this strategy adheres to all universal values and international standards. Azerbaijan supports peace for the sake of regional stability, and Azerbaijani women also actively participate in post-conflict peacemaking and reconstruction processes. Dear colleagues, firstly, I firmly believe that establishment and development of women's organizations in post-conflict countries would reduce the challenges faced by women in these societies. Additionally, I am convinced that efficient transitional justice institutions should be formed as well, in which women leaders can meet to debate peace processes, share their gender-specific experiences, and introduce special mechanisms in order to address mentioned issues. Furthermore, international organizations must arrange national discussions and cross-border interaction with female war victims to provide legal and technical guidance and study the core causes of a particular conflict. In this regard, I would like to emphasize the importance of the global forum organized in Baku and attended by representatives from 50 countries and significant international organizations. In this year's forum, which was named Threats to the Global Order, the prospects for peace were once again discussed, and of course, if we are talking about peace and security on a global scale, the issue of women's security was also a direct part of these discussions. Dear colleagues, in conclusion, I would like to mention that providing justice and security to women and girls in post-conflict societies will be highly feasible only and only if we really have desire to solve this problem. Dear colleagues, only peace brings the world together. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, dear Cornel. Next in the debate, I call Mr. Samet Seyda from Azerbaijan. Samet, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Not so easy to speak when our colleagues from Armenia try to create so unacceptable for this assembly atmosphere. Actually, today we have discussed a little bit that initiative which proposed by my fellow friend to sit together with Armenians and to discuss all kinds of questions are so important and in time. And I ask you, I appeal not to our Armenian colleagues, but I appeal to the President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Please do it. Enough is enough. You know, somebody is thinking that he's clever, he can present something which nobody knows. I appeal to my Armenian young fellow, Eduard. We met each other in Italy, and I ask you to sit together here in hemicycle. I have been waiting still your response. At the beginning of this session, I said, please find the courage and come together to sit together with Azerbaijan and discuss, and not to mislead this parliamentary assembly. To Mr. Vardanyan and to Mr. Ruben Rubinyan, no answer. You know why? Because they're working not for this parliamentary assembly, they're working for the internal agenda. They try to present themselves as the heroes. Enough. You lost everything because of this style of behavior. My friends and colleagues already mentioned about that. We gave full access to Karabakh for Armenians. We gave permission for Russian peacekeepers to come to our land. We gave a possibility to deliver food, goods, everything to Karabakh. But we still have been waiting possibility to open Zangezur corridor. That's not so fair to come to us and not allow to Azerbaijanis to go to Nakhchivan. Be fair a little bit, Mr. Vardanyan, when you are talking about legal affairs. Why you forget about the millions of refugees? And it's very easy to blame, but it's very difficult to understand your own responsibility. Please, again, I ask you, not try to mislead this organization. And again, I appeal to the leadership of the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly. We know each other approximately 15 years. And I've always been constructive, and I wanted to be constructive. Let's sit together, let's discuss the future of this organization and our relationship, but not try to change the aims of this organization in something else. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Samad. The coffee in the building is of a good quality, so if there is a moment that people want to drink coffee with me, they are more than welcome. I have a presidential credit card, so I will pay the coffee. Those who come are welcome. Now, last speaker in the debate is Mr. Vlad Patrincia from the Republic of Moldova. Vlad, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. Dear colleagues, I'm grateful to have this opportunity to discuss with you about the situation in the Republic of Moldova, my country. Allow me to inform you that in the Republic of Moldova, managed including due support provided for the Council of Europe to make important steps in consolidation of democracy and the rule of law, such as to strengthen the independence of the judiciary, approved the strategy and the action plan to ensure the independence and integrity of the justice sector, tools of the institution to fight corruption, money laundering, adopt the law of NGOs, and tools to ensure equal opportunities. At the same time, it's extremely important to have the changes and reforms to be sure that are not based on politically or geopolitically motivated decisions. In this context, let me draw your attention to the numerous deviations of the current government from the rule of law. First, limiting freedom of expression and imposing political control over Teleradio Moldova institution and audiovisual council. Attack on the prosecution system by means of essential legislative amendments which are contrary of opinions of the Venice Commission. Amendment of essential legislative acts for the function of the justice system in the absence of a broad consensus and without wide public consultations. Political involvement on the government leaders in individual cases handled by prosecutors or judges. Lack of any dialogue between central government with the opposition and local public authorities. Criminal investigation initiated against oppositional leaders and persecution of the opposition. Taking this in full consideration, let me highlight the critical importance of implementing Guinean reforms to ensure the independence of the judiciary, the prosecutor system, and the Central Electoral Commission. To eliminate political control over media, audiovisual council reforms that can only be implemented provided there is broad political and social consensus in society. Therefore, we ask you for the great involvement and to strictly monitoring the actions of the government of the Republic of Moldova in order to return the Moldovan authorities to normality and to stop the numerous deviations committed and not to admit dictatorship and the creation of extremely dangerous precedents for the stability of democracy and the rule of law, as well as in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Vlad. And this concludes the list of speakers in the free debate. Thank you very much for participating in the debate and for the way of proposing your ideas in this debate. We now turn to the progress report of the Bureau. This morning the Bureau has proposed several references to committees. They are set out in the progress report. You find in document 15550 and the addendum number 3. These references must be submitted for ratification by the Assembly in accordance with Rule 26.3. Are there any objections to these references? If not, then we continue. Our next business is to consider the changes proposed in the membership of committees. They are set out in document Commission's 2022-06 Addendum 2. Are the proposed changes in the membership of the Assembly's committee agreed to? They are agreed to. I now propose that the other decisions in the progress report be ratified. Are there any objections? Don't see. And now I go to page 12. Thank you very much. Life is so easy. Life is so easy over here. We now have come to the end of our business. I would like to thank all members of the Assembly, particularly the rapporteurs of committees, for their hard work during this part session. I also would like to thank the vice presidents who chaired during this part session, and I named them because they help the president a lot to do his work. We have had here in the chair during this week Madam Edith Estrella, Mr. John Howell, Mr. Darko Kavsky, Madam Elvira Kovac, Mr. Armin Laschet, Mr. Zolt Nemeth, Mrs. Ria Omer-Ruijten, Mr. Michael Popsoy, Madam Ingrid Skau, Madam Maya Vukovic, and Mr. Ahmed Yildiz. Thanks a lot to them for contributing to the work of this Assembly. And I would like to thank all the colleagues, because I think overall the atmosphere during this week was sometimes heated, but I think almost always constructive. And we did not have incidents in the hemicycle, which I appreciated very much, makes life for the President far more easy. I would now also like to thank the staff and our interpreters who are here with us, both permanent and temporary, who have worked hard, really hard, to make the part session a success. Sometimes we think that we are working hard, but if you look around the walls, then you see the real hard-working people. Thanks, thank you very much, and I would say let's give them a round of applause. Dear colleagues, the fourth part of the 2022 session will be held from the 10th to the 14th of October 2022. I declare the third part of the 2022 session of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe closed.